Humble beginnings. Very simple background. But he literally became beloved. He became very close to the ruler. Everybody looked up to him. Atrocities pale before the technological barbarism of modernity. Medieval tactics were gruesome, but their effect was limited compared to contemporary warfare. We have now all these medieval Muslims using medieval tactics that are gruesome. But look at the numbers. They may be cut off 50, 100, 200 heads. The technology kills 1 million people. I mean, look how many people the American wars have killed in Afghanistan and Iraq. Okay, so you've got these medieval barbaric idiots chopping off a few heads. But look at how many people have been killed by all this technology. And this is the point. They're both barbaric. One's just sanitized. It's just sanitized. You know, you drop a bomb from 30,000 feet, it's a lot easier than having to chop off somebody's head. But, right? What's the result? Huh? إِن لَمْ تَمُتْ بِسَيْفٍ مِتَّ بِغَيْرِهِ تَنَوَّعَتِ الْأَسْبَابُ وَالْمَوْتُ وَاحِدُ. If you don't die by the sword, you die by some other reason. There's a lot of ways to die, but death is one. So whether you drop a bomb from 30,000 feet or chop off the head, they're both barbaric. Sorry. It's just on YouTube, it looks a hell of a lot more barbaric when you're chopping off the head than it does some guy in a cockpit that's just pushing a button. But the results of the guy in the cockpit pushing the button are far more devastating for human beings than that idiot that just chopped off somebody's head on YouTube. You know, so let's be realistic about this. In the 20th century alone, estimates of people killed through war, genocide. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So in the 20th century alone, estimates of people killed through war, genocide, and liquidation run from a low of 80 million to a high of 300 million people. 300 million people. In World War II, everybody talks about the Holocaust. Nobody talks about the Russian Holocaust. Nobody talks about the Russians because they were communists. So it wasn't this nice little propaganda piece to put out there. 20 million Russians were massacred, slaughtered by the Nazis. 20 million. Can you imagine that? And the Russians won World War II. It wasn't the Americans. All the films showed the Americans winning the war. Just look at the divisions of the Nazis that were on the Eastern Front. Multiple times more than the divisions on the Western Front. If the Nazis never invaded Russia, we'd probably be speaking German right now. Seriously, the Russians won World War II. And then the myth of religious violence. Like, well, what is that? This myth of religious violence. Muslims, this is the most violent religious period in the history of Islam, probably. If you look at the historian who did the body count study, which is online, proved that the single most violent civilization in human history is the secular humanistic civilization. It's killed more people than any other civilization. The second is Christianity. Just by looking at historical numbers. Out of the 7 civilizations studied, Islam was the 6th, number 6. The only less violent civilization than the Muslim civilization was the Hindu civilization. Amazing. In many ways surpassed modern multiculturalism because they allowed minority communities to be completely independent. They had their own court systems. They could judge the people themselves. The Jews had their own court systems in Ottoman countries. In Iraq, they had 3 vilayats. 3. They had the Shia, the Sunni, and the Kurdish vilayats. They didn't force them all to live together. They let them live in their own environment, just like they're asking now for independence. Each one wants to live on its own. The Ottomans, that was their administration. Let the Turks control their own territory. Let the Kurds control their own territory. Let the Shia control their own territory. And let the Sunnis control it. Just pay us tax and we'll take care of you. Huh? Unfortunately, we have a mafioso I'll make you a deal you can't refuse. I mean, they talk about Muslims want everybody to pay jizya. What's the Muslim world paying to American corporations if it's not jizya? It's all protection money. Seriously, look at the amount of money that Muslims are paying for weapons from the United States. And why are they buying those weapons? What, to fight Israel? They can't, because the F-16s that they buy don't work against Israeli jets. They're always one step behind. They'll never give you the technology that they've got. They give you the last, it's like buying a used computer. It's having okay, give the Saudis the 286. We've got the Pentium. Remember 286? You guys are too young. So no one stays on top forever. This medieval myth may well provide a more accurate understanding about the human condition than the myth of progress. Of course, neither story is scientific in any rigorous sense. However, since as one with a wide exposure to all humankind's stories, not just the modern ones, one need not accept all of Lewis's neo-romantic notions to entertain the possibility that Western culture buried some of its gems along with its crimes in the past. At the very least, in order to face the adage of Santayana, those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it. Head on, there is no harm in digging them up and seeing if they still shine. Okay, so that's very important. And then, so I want to show you now the Wheel of Fortune in the Quran. And there are many verses that indicate the nature of this wheel. But I think the most striking, and this came to me in this Ramadan, reading this verse, which is Surah Yunus, in verse 21. وَإِذَا أَذَقْنَا النَّاسَ رَحْمَةً مِّن بَعْدِ ضَرَّاءَ مَسَّتْهُمْ. And if we cause people to taste mercy after harm had afflicted them, and Allah attributes the rahmah to Himself, but the darra is massathu, darra. إِذَا لَهُمْ مَكْرٌ فِي آيَاتِنَا. And then you see them with their makr, which is their craftiness concerning our sign. We're showing them signs, and yet they're reinterpreting them for their own advantage. So we showed them how, okay, America, you're on top now, but it used to be Britain. Remember that? And remember when France was on top? Remember? And Britain wasn't on top. Remember when Portugal was on top? Now look at Portugal. Right? Remember Henry the Navigator? They used to rule the world. Spain, remember when they were on top? In other words, don't you see the wheel? But why are you convinced your mekar in our signs is to tell yourselves, we'll always be on top? And the thing about knowing that one day you're going to be on the bottom, you're going to be treating people a little nicer because maybe they'll be nice to you when they get to the top. You see, all these Arabs that treat Pakistanis and Indians like crap, right? Maybe one day India is going to be the dominant power in the world, and suddenly your sons are going to India to get jobs in their houses to serve them. Yeah. Maybe they're going to remember those stories their grandma told them about being a servant in your house. Right? What goes around comes around. قُلِ اللَّهُ أَسْرَعُ مَكْرًا. You plot, you've got your little crafty cleverness. Well, we've got our plan too. Right? إِنَّ رُسُلَنَا يَكْتُبُونَ مَا تَمْكُرُونَ. Our messengers, our angels are writing it all down. What you're doing while you're on top, they're writing it all down. هُوَ الَّذِي يُسَيِّرُكُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. He's the one that circulates you on the land and in the sea. تِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Dawla, the circle, نُدَاوِلُهَا. We cause it. One day you've got it, the next day you don't. نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. نُسَيِّرُكُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. We circulate you in the land and on the sea. We give you power. Allahumma malik al-mulk, tu'ti al-mulka man tasha,
وَتَنْزِعَ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ. We give power to whom we please, and we take power away from whom we please. We exalt whom we please. We put you on the top, and we abase whom we please. We put you on the bottom. Now look, here's the metaphor, and this is a perfect wheel of fortune. حتى إذا كنتم في الفلك وجرين بهم بريح. You were on a ship. Now this is a metaphor, right? This is an analogy. You were on a ship. Jara means to circulate, to go around also. And jarena, the ship, jariya means ship also. It means a young woman, because she goes around serving in the house. A jariya was a servant girl. She's tajri fil bayt. The jariya is a ship that circulates. It goes out and comes back. You see, it goes out and comes back. And you don't know profit or loss. You never know. So, there you are on your ship. And the ship happens upon a nice wind. 12 o'clock. وَفَرِحُوا بِهَا. And they've got joy. جَاءَتْهَا رِيحٌ عَاصِفٌ. Suddenly a storm starts to appear. Right? So now you're happy, but there's a storm over there. Fear sets in. 3 o'clock. Then what happens? وَجَاءَهُمَ الْمَوْجُ مِنْ كُلِّ مَكَانٍ. Then the waves start coming from every direction. Now they're on the bottom, right? What happens? وَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ أُحِيطَ بِهِمْ. And they think they're going to be destroyed. It's over. Despair, sorrow, grief. And then what happens? دَعُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. Then they call on God, hoping. Right? And what do they say? What do they say? لَئِنْ أَنْجَيْتَنَا. If you just save us min hadihi, from this, لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الشَّاكِرِينَ. You see, when they're here, they say, when I get into power, I'm going to rectify everything. That's what they say. This is in the traditional, this is the traditional schema of this. This guy says, he's the prince, hoping to ascend. And what he says, I'm going to get rid of the oppressors. I'm going to do all that, right? That's what he does. But then what happens when Allah does it? He gets, فَلَمَّا أَنْجَيْهُمْ إِذَا هُمْ يَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And then we put them in power, and what do? They start to oppress. Now they're on regno, right? They start to oppress. And then what happens? بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. They don't have any right to do it, but they still do it. يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ إِنَّمَا بَغْيُكُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِكُمْ. Oh, humanity, your oppression is against yourselves. The Israelis aren't oppressing the Palestinians. They're oppressing themselves. They're oppressing themselves. متاع الحياة الدنيا. This is the mata' of حياة الدنيا. متاع قليل. Little bit, and then you lose it. لا يغرنك بالله الغرور. Don't get deluded by this circle. When you're on the top, don't get deluded. ثم إلينا مرجعكم فننبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. You're going to return to us, and we're going to explain all of this to you. So just be patient. تربصوا إني معكم من المتربصين. Let's wait. Allah says He's going to explain the whole thing. He's going to tell you why He put the Jews in power. He's going to tell you why they did what they did. He's going to punish the wrongdoers. He's going to rectify the people that were oppressed. He's going to heal the sick. He's going to punish the wrong. That's our promise. إنما مثل الحياة الدنيا كماء. The likeness of this world is like water, right? So the water comes down. أنزلناه من السماء فاختلط به نبات الأرض. It mixes with the nabat of the earth, right? مما يأكل الناس والأنعام. So people eat it, and the an'am eat it, the good and the evil. But إنهم كالأنعام. So everybody benefits in the dunya, the good people, the bad people, bil ishara. I mean, it means literally the cows and the livestock, but also the bad humans are called an'am in the Quran. So everybody benefits from it, the good and the evil. حتى إذا أخذت الأرض زخرفها. But then the earth takes on its ornaments. This is the regno. Everything looks really good. It takes on وَظَنَّ أَهْلُهَا أَنَّهُمْ قَادِرُونَ عَلَيْهَا. The people up here, because it's all going well, they think they're all powerful. They think they can do whatever they want. أَتَاهَا أَمْرُنَا لَيْلًا أَوْ نَهَارًا. Our amr comes by night or by day, and suddenly they're on the bottom. Right? فَجَعَلْنَاهَا حَصِيدًا كَأَن لَمْ تَغْنَ بِالْأَمْسِ. We obliterate it like it had no benefit yesterday. So you're down here, you can't even remember what it was like to be up here. كَذَلِكَ نُفَصِّلُ الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Here we are, discerning for you our signs that you might contemplate about these things. The nature of dunya, it's daru taghyir, it's always changing, it's never going to stay the same. You're healthy today, you might be sick tomorrow. You're wealthy today, you might be poor tomorrow. Don't get deluded. The Prophet ﷺ said, نِعْمَتَانِ مَغْبُونٌ فِيهِمَا كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ الصِّحَّةُ وَالْفَرَاغُ. Two blessings people are cheated out of because they think they're going to last forever. Health and leisure time. So when you've got leisure time, you don't use it. You don't study. You don't learn. You don't go out and help people. You waste your time, and then it's gone, and you're down here. You had it. You didn't use it for what it was for. وَاللَّهُ يَدْعُو إِلَى الدَّارِ السَّلَامِ وَيَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ إِلَى الصِّرَاطِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Okay, so now God calls to the abode of peace. He just told us about the wheel of fortune. This is not for the believers. Where's Darus Salam? It's Jannah, right? But aren't there mubasharat of Jannah in dunya? Right? They're supposed to be, right? So what is Darus Salam here? Because the Muslims traditionally called the land of Islam Darus Salam, right? Jerusalem was Yerushalayim, right? Baghdad was called Madinatus Salam, the city of peace. Muslims are obsessed with peace. Historically, we were obsessed with peace. That was the whole point. Spread peace. Afshu salam bainakum. The Prophet said, spread peace. Our greeting is Assalamu alaikum. It's not Al-Harbu alaikum. Sayyidina Ali had a child, and he named it Harb, Al-Hasan. He went to the Prophet, he said, ماذا سميته؟ قال سميته حربا. قال بل اسمه حسن. He said, no, his name not war. His name's good, beauty. He came next time, had a child, سميته حربا. He went to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, what did you call him? He said, سميته حربا. He said, بل اسمه الحسين. He had a third child. He wanted a warrior. سميته حرب, because the Arabs, they call their sons the names for their enemies. This is Jahili. He was still thinking in the previous time. Because the Jahili Arabs, they named their sons names like, Nimr, Asad, Dhi'ib. Those were the names they used. Hamzala, bitter, Talha, big powerful tree. Because they were names for their enemies. Allah changed that. No, Abdurrahman, slave of peace. Abdullah, slave of God. Right? And so he came with a third son. He died, but he came with a third son. ماذا سميته حربا بل اسمه محسن. His name's Muhsin. Those are the names the Prophet wanted. Al-Hasan, beauty, spread good. Al-Hussein, he's second in line, so he's a little less than the first one, right? And then Muhsin. So, where is Darus Salam on the wheel? Come on, I just put it there. Yeah, so what is this? What do we call this? It's an axis. What else is it called? Huh? What? What's the center of a wheel? What do you call it? Those are spokes or what comes out? It's a hub. Okay, so we'll call it a hub. Okay, so it's all good in the hub. Okay, this is the hub. We'll write it in Arabic, right? Hub. right? You want to get into the hub, the hub, the love of Allah. The more you get to the center, the less affected you are by the vicissitudes of time. The more you center your being with God, the more these things become meaningless because you see them as from God. Because God made a world that's very nature is to do this. This is the nature of the world. This is the nature of the world. You have to accept it. Just accept it. Let the wheel spin, but get into the eye of the hurricane. Get into the eye of the hurricane. The eye of the hurricane is complete tranquility, stillness. When ships go into the eye of the hurricane, there's no storm. It's all peaceful. They're in Dar es-Salam. And this is why أصلح الناس in Islam, أصلح الناس في قرن من القرون, the most righteous human being, because one of us is the best of us in this time. There is one Muslim who's better than all the other Muslims because he represents the heart of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet was the best of all human beings. The Prophet is the qutb of existence. He's qutb al-wujud. He's the axis of existence. That's why he's perfect stillness. He was never perturbed. He went to Ta'if, they spit on him, threw rocks at him, they made him bleed. Did he say, Allah anzal alayhim al-adhab? Did he say that? No, because he didn't see them as doing it to him. He saw them as a bala from God. And he said, إِلَى مَنْ تَكِلُونِي? Who are you going to send me to? إِلَى عَدُوٍ يَتَجَهَمُنِي? Like to some enemy, right? Who doesn't know who I am? He said, if you're content with me, I'm fine with it. وَالْعَافِيَةُ أَوْسَعُ. But afiyah is better. It's nicer to be in good conditions than bad conditions. We don't have a victimization complex like some religions. They actually like to be punished, right? Muslims don't like that. We would rather be ruling than be ruled. We would rather be that. But if we're under the authority of somebody else, then we know who gave them the power. We're not deluded into thinking they did it themselves, because we know who controls the wheel of fortune. Allahumma malik al-mulk. You're the owner of the dominion. You give it to whom you please. Right? So this is where Ghazali was up here, and then at about 38, he was here, like, this doesn't look good for me. And then he loses his voice, and now he's here. The thing that put him here was taken away from him, and he finds himself here. He went into a state of depression. But then, Da'Allah mukhlisin, he called on Allah with sincerity, and he started his journey where? Here. Into the center. And he becomes the qutb. And this is why none of it affected him at the end of his life. None of it affected him. He had no interest in power, jah. He said, I used to teach kasban lil jah. He said, now I teach how to get rid of jah. He said, I used to teach in order to get stature. Now I'm teaching to help people get rid of this love. Hubb ad-dunya. What's our disease? Hubb ad-dunya. Loving to be up here. Wa karahiyat, the struggle. Hating to be down here. This is our sickness. That we're trapped in this circle. And this is where Allah is telling us to get to. Be here. And none of it will matter. And then you can struggle, and your struggle will be meaningful. Because right now, you're down here, you're just struggling out of anger. Out of love of vengeance. Right? When Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, this is where he was working from. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi was working from the center. He didn't spend his youth throwing stones at crusaders. He didn't spend his youth throwing stones at crusaders. Who can tell me what he did as a young man? Huh? He was a student, and one of the books he studied was the Ihya. He was a fruit of the madrasa of Imam Abu Hamid. He was a Shafi'i scholar. He memorized the Quran. That's what he was doing in his youth. Even though the Crusaders were occupying Palestine, he knew we don't have any power to do it. We can't get rid of these people now, so what should I use my time for? To learn the things that will help me not just free Al-Quds, but free the people who are oppressing the people in Al-Quds from their oppression. Unsuru akhakum zaliman aw madhluma. Give help to your brother, even your Jewish brother, your Christian brother. Help them stop oppressing. That's how the Prophet said, we know how to help victims. How do you help the oppressor? He said, by stopping him from his oppression. At least remind him. At least tell him, you're oppressing. You shouldn't do this. Right? Because they kill the people that remind them. Allah says that in the Quran. Right? Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. Right? All Malcolm was doing, the tongue was all he had. He didn't have any army. And he started from hatred. That's where he was, and that's why if you listen to his early talks, they're just filled with hate. But listen to his last talk. Nobody wants to hear Malcolm after Mecca. They all want that harsh Malcolm. Yeah. They don't want to hear the Malcolm that suddenly realizes people are human beings. White people are human. A lot of them would almost convince you otherwise. I understand that. But they're human beings. Right? Turkish people are white. A lot of them. They don't behave like that sickness, right? Which some attribute to a lack of melatonin. You need more sun. The sun makes you happy, doesn't it? When the sun comes up. You live in Europe, there's never any sun, you're miserable. You get a bad attitude. But that's Malcolm. Malcolm got there. That's why in the end of his life, that's where he was. What's Martin Luther King said right before he dies? I've been to the mountain. Everybody wants longevity. I've been to the mountaintop. He was moving. That's where but he started. He understood this. Trust me, he knew this model very well. You know, one thing Martin Luther King said was, if I wasn't against violence on moral terms, for moral reasons, I'd still be against it for pragmatic reasons. That's what Muslims haven't learned that. I'm against modern violence on moral grounds. I really am. I am against modern warfare. I don't believe in modern warfare. I don't believe Muslims should be engaged in modern warfare. I really don't. I'd rather be killed than kill people with nuclear weapons. I'd rather die than drop a bomb. I really would. I'd rather die than blow up children. I'd much rather be killed than kill some innocent person. And the Prophet said towards the end of time, he said, be the best of the two sons of Adam, right? Kun, khayra ibn Adam. Be like the best of what? It's Habil, right? Not Qabil. It's Abel, not Cain. You know, in the tafsir of Imam al-Baghawi, what he says? He says that Ibn Abbas said Cain was actually weaker than Abel. Abel could have defeated him, but he said their sharia was that they weren't even allowed self-defense. And that means, if that is true, that means that the foundation of our tradition is nonviolence. And I would argue that the Prophet would exhaust every nonviolent means before he would go to violent means. He would exhaust every nonviolent means. And that's why at Hudaybiyah, he had every right to fight those people, but he didn't. It was a nonviolent solution to a problem. The Muslims didn't like it. Why? Because Al-Yasir was being tortured. They were in chains. They're calling on them, help us. The Prophet said, Sabran ya Al-Yasir, inna maw'idukum al-jannah. There's a proof that the Prophet is seeing a Muslim tortured, and he's not doing anything about it. Outwardly. He saw a Muslim being tortured, and he didn't do anything about it outwardly. Because he was a profound strategic thinker. Completely different approach to the problems of the world. That's... What time is it? 9:35? 9:45. I'll give you one more example of the Wheel of Fortune, but you'll see it many times in the Quran. It's a very useful model, and I believe it is a Quranic model. And Allah is using that example of the mushrikeen. So they're the ones that are in this circle. The Muslims are supposed to be in the center. Right? الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله. ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. Those who believe and their hearts have stillness, طمأنينة, from the dhikr of Allah. Isn't it by the dhikr of Allah the hearts are still? Why are they still? Because there's no movement in the hub, in the hub. There's no movement here. These people are not still. They're in complete confusion because it's just, this is their life. Right? This is their life. They're in that samsara of just this constantly turning wheel. And that's why Muslims are confused. They don't understand. Why aren't we on top? If we're the truth, why aren't we on top? Because that's not where the truth resides. It resides here. It doesn't reside here. This is where the truth resides. It's not to be on the top, it's to be in the center. And we've lost our center.